Good to have you back with us remotely this time. When you look at these wild swings on the stock market, and then you look at some of your colleagues, House Democrats, who are questioning the Treasury, pardon me, the Trade Secretary,
Hmm.
who knew this was coming before it happened, what assurances can you give voters in our area that Congress can hold this administration accountable with oversight to make sure there's no funny business going on in these wild swings in the market?
Well, it's really challenging. I mean, given that the House Republicans and this administration are hell-bent on creating uncertainty in our markets, with the implication or with the application, I should say, of these tariffs across the board. We saw just yesterday, as you know, Mark, the president made a big decision in pulling off a significant number of the tariffs that he had imposed because I think he saw what was happening to the stock market. And so the erraticness of this administration, the high level of uncertainty is creating pain points with working families. We're going to see costs rise. I'm talking to my farmers. As you know, I have a very agrarian economy, a lot of agriculture in my district, and they are feeling the effects right now. Working people are feeling the effects as they look at their retirement accounts and they're seeing what's happening with the stock market. So I can tell you, I'm doing everything I can to call this out, to try to hold this administration accountable. But with a Republican lock on the Senate, the House, and the White House, what we can do is call it out, but we're not in a position in the minority to pass anything to fight this back.
Well, perhaps there are a number of Senate Republicans who have looked at a proposal to rein the presidential tariff powers back in. Congress gave the president these powers. Should Congress take them back?
Yes, they should. And actually, that's an excellent point. I've signed on to legislation that Congressman Gregory Meeks is actually introducing that would emphasize and scale back. The president is saying that he's declaring an emergency, a national emergency. And because of that national emergency declaration, he's claiming to have the unilateral authority to put these tariffs on countries all across the globe. This is typically something that Congress has a role in playing and helping to work with the White House to set those types of high levels of tariffs that we know are going to increase costs for working families. But what we're seeing is this administration totally ignoring that, as they're ignoring a lot of different legislative branch authority right now and trying to make unilateral decisions that are hurting working families. So I'm proud to be supporting legislation in the House, along with bipartisan colleagues in the Senate, to push back on this and to restate our authority as legislators to having a role in how these tariffs are set.
To this point in the conversation, we've been describing the downside of this policy. I wonder if you see any merit to some of the upside. You've been very close with trades, labor unions. Some of them want to see a more industrialized, manufacturing-based economy, reshoring of those jobs. To what extent are tariffs an effective tool to pursue that policy? And is there some way Congress can steer the president toward a policy that helps Americans here?
Yeah, well, it's a very important question, Mark. I'm very proud to represent Granite City, which employs thousands of steel workers, United Steelworkers, that make Granite City steel work. So I'm trying to do everything I can to have continued investment in that plant. I think China has been a very bad actor in dumping cheap steel into our markets, bringing down the cost of American made steel, hurting our steel workers. And so I do think that tariffs, if applied strategically, and that is what is really key, strategically to countries like China that have been bad trade actors, I could support selective, prescriptive trade or tariff on countries like China. But then when you look at countries like Canada, where we have positive trade relationships, that's just eroding the trade partnerships that I know my farmers are relying on, consumers are relying on. And we don't want to see what is going to happen in the approach that this administration has taken with tariffs is increased costs for working people. What I find to be so frustrating is when President Trump took office on January 20th, he told the American people his number one priority was going to be to decrease the cost of goods in this country, make groceries more affordable, make gas more affordable. But what we're seeing with tariffs and his approach to tariffs is it's only going to lead to higher prices.
I know we're looking a lot at the prices side and the tariff policy, the stock market. There's also the tax cuts and the spending cuts that House Republicans just put through. You voted against it. One,
Yeah.
is that a tough vote when you look at that? And what would be the impact, do you think, of this policy should the Senate and President sign it into law?
It's not a tough vote for me when Republicans are trying to propose $880 billion worth of cuts to Medicaid to some of the most vulnerable folks in my communities, seniors, those with disabilities. These are working people struggling to get by. That Medicaid is a stopgap, a little bit of assistance that helps ensure that they get the health care and the assistance that they need. It wasn't hard for me to vote no on a House Republican proposal that would cut SNAP by $230 billion when we're seeing this administration apply tariffs that we know are going to lead to higher prices. People are suffering, working people are struggling. And what passed out of the House of Representatives today is outrageous and a direct assault on working people in this country, making things more expensive. And all of this is done, Mark, because they want to find pay-fors, ways to pay for tax cuts. And let me tell you, these tax cuts are going to benefit people that don't need a tax cut. These are the billionaires, these are the Elon Musks of this world. These guys don't need a tax cut. Who needs a tax cut is the middle class and the working class in this country. And that is why I was very proud to vote against this House Republican proposal that came to the floor today, which, by the way, passed completely on a 100% party line vote.
We're glad to have you on this day when it's been such a flurry of activity in the House. Another vote that came across your desk was the SAVE Act. Republicans are
Mhm.
pushing the proposal to require that you prove your citizenship when you register to vote. There are a number of ways you can do that. One of them is with a real ID, and that
Mhm.
deadline is coming up for people who want to travel and get a real ID anyways. So
Right.
where's the victim?
Yeah, the issue is that it's going to make it much more difficult for people to exercise their right to vote in this country. And they're doing this through overly onerous ID legislation. That's what the SAVE Act is about. It disproportionately makes it difficult for women, married women in particular. Some married women have made the decision, obviously to change their last name, taking their husband's last name. They might not have then gone ahead and changed their birth certificate, the name that appears, their now married name on their birth certificate. If their birth certificate doesn't line up with their voter ID or their voter registration, their real ID, they can be challenged at the polling place. And we know for a fact that voters can then use a passport potentially to be a backup verification for them to exercise their right to vote. But Americans, on average, only about 25% of Americans have passports. So, what the SAVE Act is really all about is creating confusion at the polling place as a way to disenfranchise voters and make it more difficult for people to exercise their right to vote. And so, I voted against the SAVE Act because I think we should be making sure that folks are legally coming to the polling place, able to exercise their right to vote, but we shouldn't make it more difficult for working people, and in particular women, to exercise their right to vote.
It is already illegal for non-citizens to vote in American elections, and in the small number of
Right.
instances where we find that some have tried to do so, in example, in Illinois, the state itself sent out it was improper and incorrect, but sent out an invitation inviting these people to vote because they checked a box at the DMV, and I think out of like several hundred people that were invited to vote, only one attempted to cast their ballot. So it's a very small number of people that have done this in the past. But what gives you any degree of confidence that the system we have right now is impenetrable, perfect, and that it will catch any kind of voter fraud?
Well, voter fraud is a myth, as you've outlined. I mean, a lot of it is if it was one voter. I mean, we want to eliminate any examples of people fraudulently voting. And so if that's requiring someone to, provide an ID and verify the fact that they live at that address, I had to do that when I showed up and voted. But we don't want to create an overly onerous process that makes it so much more difficult. Multiple forms of ID, your birth certificate matching your passport. That's not what we're talking about. And I want to say the Republicans are using this scapegoat and that non-citizens are voting. You're absolutely right, Mark. Non-citizens are not able, they're not eligible to vote. I don't support them voting. If you're not a citizen, you shouldn't be voting in the United States. And the cases of that happening are so absolutely slim. We should be looking at how we can eradicate that, but making it much more difficult for the vast majority of Americans that are trying to exercise their right to vote is not the right way to go about it.
Historically speaking, it's one of the fastest ways to invite authorities to deport you if you're a non-citizen, is to try and vote. So there are severe consequences that come along with that. I'd like to ask you one political question, if I could. I understand you're a close political ally of Senator Dick Durbin, who's been there in Congress for a very long time.
Yeah.
He would be 80, running for re-election in 2 years. And at the time of our conversation right now, we still don't know if he will be filling out paperwork to be pre-slated or selected as the favorite by the Cook County Democratic Party, which is a big step in the process to becoming the party's nominee in 2026. Would you offer him any advice in these moments as he makes up his mind? We know that time is running out. What would you like to see him do?
Look, I think if he decides he wants to run again for reelection, I would be supporting him. He has been a tremendous partner to me and my office and the work that we've been doing in the Metro East region in particular. I've partnered with him as we've been trying to address the historic flooding issues that have plagued the communities of East St. Louis and Cahokia Heights. He's been with me every step of the way in that work. And so I've been honored to get to be a House member representing Springfield, Illinois, the place where he calls home. And so, I'm waiting to see what his final decision is going to be, but he's been a fantastic senator. The state of Illinois is lucky to have him. And like everybody else, I'm waiting to see what his final decision is.
As you said, he makes his home in Springfield, but he's from East St. Louis. What would this region be losing if he decides to hang it up and walk away? And also, what are you looking for in any potential replacement candidate to run in a primary for downstate? What are you looking for in any candidate from wherever they're from to prioritize the needs of this greater St. Louis region?
Well, I think what I'd say is, first of all, we have to see what the senator's decision is going to be. His footprint and the work that he's done, his legacy throughout the entire state of Illinois is very deep. He's built a significant amount of seniority in the United States Senate, which is very significant. He's a #2 Democrat in the U.S. Senate. And with that comes a lot of ability to bring home federal funding to our state, be a very strong advocate, for the state and our needs and our communities. So I'm looking if he were to decide, not to run, is somebody that would be able to follow in his footsteps, someone that's going to be a champion for working people, someone that's going to be fighting to the death for our communities, making sure that we're getting our fair share of our federal resources. That's what I work on as a member of the House of Representatives. It's what I'd hope that everyone in our entire delegation does. And it's what I'm proud to get to work alongside Senator Durbin to do every day.
It doesn't sound like he'll be feeling any pressure from you to step aside.
I think it's his decision. I've been really honored to get to work with him. I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and his work.
Congresswoman Nikki Budzinski joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your time.